All right. First of all, Bruchim Abayim. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's wonderful to be here in Shaare Rachamim. Let's get the name right. Big thank you to my good friend Hayedid Mibeten Oren Betzaleli, who's been my friend for many years. I've now renewed an acquaintance with him after maybe 13 years of not seeing him. He hasn't changed, maybe slightly longitude or latitude, but anyway, Baruch Hashem. Right, so this week's parasha is Vayetze. So we start off in the very first pasuk. Something odd is happening. Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Shava vayelech Harana. So that translates as Yaakov left Beersheba and went towards Haran. So let me ask you a question. What difference does it make where he left? We already know we knew where he was living. We had a whole parasha before which tells us that he was in Haran. You should just tell me Yaakov went to Haran. Why do I need to know where he left? What difference does it make? There's one answer to this which had a particular impression on me. And Rashi gives us the answer. Rashi tells us that when a tzaddik leaves a place where he's been residing, he takes something with him. He makes such an impression. In Lashon HaKodesh we say Rishima. He makes a Roshem. He makes such an impression on the place where he is that when he's removed, you can tell, you may not even know what is going on, but something has happened. Yeah? You may not even need to know who the tzaddik is that left. You just feel something is not quite right. Now, let me compound that statement. Yeah? Yaakov is not the only one who left. Yaakov had a father and a grandfather. Avraham Avinu also left. What's the third parasha? Lech Lecha. Yitzchak also left. But we don't hear and talk about Avram leaving a huge void, and we don't talk about Yitzchak. We just make a fuss about Yaakov. So why all the fuss now, and not with his father and grandfather? So the Avnei Shoham gives us an answer. Because you have to understand who was Avram, who was Yitzchak, and who was Yaakov. Avram, you know what they used to call Avram? They call him the Prince of God. Even the Goyim, every single person in their right mind knew Avram was as a famous personality. He walked the land and people used to, his presence preceded him. So he was very famous. Yeah. Yitzchak Avinu also, very much out there in the public eye. If he would have been living now, he would be plastered all over the social media. And people will be making blogs on him, and people will be, you never know what they say about people on blogs, right? But he was Mr. Personality. And then we have Yaakov. Who was Yaakov? Yaakov Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. He was the little unknown character. He was the unknown soldier, sitting inside the tents, being very intense. Inside those tents, yeah? Steiging away. Who knew about Yaakov? Nobody. Was he on Twitter? Were they talking about him on Facebook? No. Who's Yaakov? They may not even know who he was. Esav, they knew who Esav was. Oh, Esav, Mr. Bandito. Everyone knew Esav, running around, causing mayhem, killing people, raping young women, you name it, he did it. Yeah, so he was very much out there. But Yaakov, no. So when he left and there was a gaping void, people didn't know where to turn. Why are things so different? Why is there a lack of Kedusha in Haran now? Why, what changed? So you could have turned around and said, you know who left? Yaakov. Who's Yaakov? He was a holy man. What holy man? I never saw any holy man. Yeah, but you felt his impact. You knew when he'd left, you knew what you were missing. Yeah? That's why it says he left Haran. And it also indicates something else. And this is something that I heard from Rav Rav Moshe Aaron Stern, alav shalom. He was a rabbi in Yerushalayim. He was the nephew of Rav Scheinberg, if I'm not mistaken. So he said something very interesting, which relates to this a little bit. It says in Pirkei Avot that Hillel had 80 Talmidim. Hillel, Hillel and Shammai, yeah? His top Talmud, number 1 out of 80, was somebody called Yonatan ben Uziel. Yeah, have you ever been to Tiberia? Yeah, Amukah. Yeah. So in Amukah, that's where he's buried. Yeah.
He never got married.
And there was a whole thing. If you go there, you find a shidduch. But the fact is that he was so holy that if birds would fly over his head, they would get singed by the fire of his Torah. Yeah? Instant barbecue chicken. Fantastic. So it's great. You never go hungry. So that's how holy he was. Now what about and we're told the least, like number 80 on the list of Hillel's Talmidim, he was called Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, who himself was a major player in the Gemara. He had a part in the second Beit HaMikdash. He rallied all the Chachamim into Yavne. Anyway, he was also a big player, very famous. Okay, says Rav Moshe Aaron Stern. What happened to the other 78? You told me 2. There's another 78 missing. What about them? Who are they? Nobody knows. Says Rav Moshe Aaron Stern. He says you don't have to be famous and out there in the public eye to have an effect. You have another 78 people who don't even know who they are. They were at least greater than Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. At least. Yeah, which is pretty high. Nobody needs to know who you are. But you will have an effect.
Yochanan ben Zakkai or Yochanan...
Yonatan ben Uziel, I'm saying. There were 78. Because Yochanan ben Zakkai was at the bottom. So 78, at least, that's a pretty high qualification, no? To be greater than Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and nobody knows who you are. So you don't have to be famous. You can be sitting in an island, let's say Jerba, and you can be, coming out with great chidushim, and nobody needs to know who you are. You may even have a greater effect if people don't know who you are. Okay, that's something else. So now what happens? Yaakov leaves. He'd been living with his father-in-law for, I think it was 20 years, and his father-in-law wasn't, you have the father-in-law from hell, and the mother-in-law from hell. This was the definition of the father-in-law from hell. He was, in case anybody wants to know, he was, he could open up a school teaching Rachamim how to do rishut. People become Rachamim of their own accord. He literally could open up a whole symposium. You want to be a Rasha? I got the gear.
You talk about Lavan, right?
I talk about Lavan. Wow. Yeah? I'll teach you how to do it. You want to cheat people? You want to sketch people? Come, I'll teach you. So, Yaakov was not in the best of company. And you know what? Yaakov never slept a night's sleep during those 20 years. Not one night did he sleep a proper, decent night's sleep. You know what that means? First of all, I need to define this, because the Gemara tells us nobody can stay for 3 days without sleep. Impossible. Yeah. If somebody tells you, I slept for 3.5 days, you don't believe him. The body physically cannot take sleep deprivation. Yeah. So, what does the Torah mean when it says he never slept a night's sleep? You know what it means? It means he never went to sleep. He might have fallen asleep, but he never went to sleep. What's the difference? You can you can say, look, I've done a hard day's work, I've been with the sheep all day, I've been, rounding them up and feeding them and everything, and then I have to go home and deal with my Zan, and deal with my children, and deal with my Baba and my Bibi, and I'm fed up with it, now I'm going to bed. He never said that. He would work, and after he worked, he would work some more, and then he would learn, whatever he would do. If he fell asleep, he fell asleep. But to go to sleep, to say, I'm now planning to go to sleep, that he didn't do. He did what he did until sleep overtook him. Yeah? Some people do that very well.
Yeah, he did the same thing also.
Perfect example. And so did Rav Elioshev as well. 2 nights ago, you know what they say about Rav Elioshev? When Rav Elioshev died, yeah, there was a lot of people who started naming their male children Yosef Shalom. Yeah? And then they suddenly stopped it. You know why? Because the babies will wake up at 2 a.m. Yeah, that's anyway, that's not true. But the Vilagon also. You said, where would you get a better example? The best example is David HaMelech himself. He slept the sleep of a horse. What's the sleep of a horse? He slept 40 winks. The minimum they would need to sleep, because his work is too important.
Rambam with he has a kiddush. He said you have to have 8 hours sleep.
Yeah, but that's something that's not the only opinion. Rambam say there's other people say 6 hours. It's definitely a machloket, right?
And this is to do.
Yeah. Sukkah, yeah.
To sleep in the daytime.
It talks about people who have midday sleep. Yeah, but at the end of the day, Yaakov knew what he was doing. He never went to sleep. He might have fallen asleep when he had to, but he never went to sleep. Okay? So now he's left his father-in-law. Now he decided, for once, I'm going to go to sleep. So he gets to Har Moriah. He puts his head down. And straight away, he has a dream. There's a dream of a ladder. What on earth is he dreaming about? You've been with sheep the last 20 years. You think, he put his head down and you think, brown sheep, white sheep. He'll think about maybe, food or something, and have a nice lamb cutlets, or something. I'm trying to think of the Persian equivalent. To have some holme sabzi, what? Kotlet. You know what? Gont over. No. He dreams about a ladder. A big ladder with angels. Olim v'yordim bo. Up and down, up and down, up and down. That doesn't sound very likely. So what's going on here? So I heard one explanation which is beautiful. All the explanations are beautiful. This one really touched me. Because the ladder is supposed to symbolize what a person is supposed to be in this world. A person can be one of 2 things, let's say. There's 2 possibilities where a person can go. He can either be with his head in the clouds. He doesn't have a firm grip on reality. His head is always thinking on higher things, which is good, don't get me wrong, that's good. Or a person could be very deeply rooted in the ground. He's very earthy. Like Esav, he's planted on it, but in Shemaim, no. That he won't go there. Both ways have validity, but it's not quite enough, because a person has to have his feet on the ground and his head has to be in the Shemaim. He has to stretch from the ground to the Shemaim. That's what a person has to do in this world. Because You can't be like a malach. It's floating in the air, because you're in this world. You're not in Shamayim. But you can't be a man of the world, like you're living in this world with no eye, klapi ma'ala, with no eyes that are looking upwards. You're supposed to take what you have here in this world and elevate it. And that was the lesson from the ladder. Feet on the ground, your head should be in Shamayim. So there's lots we can talk about the ladder, but I want to just move on and finish this and see if we can take some questions. B'ezrat Hashem. So I'm going to go step back a little bit, because I want to talk about those years that Yaakov served his father-in-law Lavan. So I'm sure we all know that Yaakov was tricked. He wanted to marry Rachel. He ended up marrying Leah. He worked 7 years for Leah, and then he worked 7 years for Rachel.
This is brought up in Gemara Megillah, right? Sorry.
The whole, well, it's in the Torah about how he worked. This is what I'm going to talk about. But it's expanded in the Gemara. But the actual pasuk says, I'm trying to find the pasuk here. Maybe you can help me. It says, Od Sheva Shanim Acherot. When he worked 7 years for Leah, he worked Od Sheva Shanim Acherot. He worked another 7 years. Now, the word Od and the word Acherot seem to be conveying the same thing. Od means another. Acherot means others. So it seems a bit extra when you say another 7 years, another. Why is it repeating the same word twice? So one answer is Yaakov served his father-in-law the first 7 years, and with the second 7 years you would think, you know what, he's probably fed up by now. 7 years for one wife that wasn't even supposed to be his wife, and now the one he really wanted to marry, he's working another 7 years. Give him a break, man. Let him get married on the first day. Do the have a 7 days of Sheva Brachot and finish. Let the guy go, for heaven's sake. No, another 7 years. What does it mean? He worked for Rachel with the same diligence that he worked for Leah. Yeah, there was no I'm fed up now. What do you say in Persian? Chaver, you killed me with his first 7 years. No, I worked 7 years for one wife, I worked 7 years for the other wife. And you know what a tremendous thing that was? And this is what most people don't think like this. Put yourself in the position of Rachel. Yeah, you're the sister who now took a back seat for 7 years. Yeah, and now your husband is going to work for you. Can you imagine if your husband works for you for, let's say, 6 weeks? Yeah? He says, you know what, you cheated me once, you're not going to do it again. I'm going to give you 6 weeks of work, and then that's going to be it. And I'm not working for you anymore. So, how would you feel if you're Rachel? You would feel like a second-class citizen. You would feel, hey, my husband worked for his first wife for 7 years, and for me, I'm only worth 6 weeks. That'll make her feel terrible. That'll make her feel like a second-class citizen. Like that's, So he prevented her that anguish. He prevented her. He saved her. He preserved her dignity. That's a tremendous thing to do. And we're not talking about a few weeks here and there. We're talking about 7 whole years. You think he could have made use of that time with something else? You know what a tzaddik like Yaakov Avinu could have done in 7 years? But he gave that for the dignity of his wife. It's tremendous praise of Yaakov. Now let's step forward a little bit. If we look at, I might have had the wrong source here. Lechem le'echol v'beged ilbosh. Where's that pasuk? I've got here 2020. No, that's wrong. Okay. But the pasuk says, talking about Yaakov was requesting bread to eat and clothes to wear. It's a simple request. Hashem, I would like to eat something and I don't want to be naked. It's not much to ask, right? A few threads, a little bit of bread. That's it. That's all. But why would you qualify what you need the bread for? Why would you qualify what you need the clothes for? What I'm trying to say is, what else do you need bread for? Of course you're going to eat bread. What else do you need clothes for? Of course you're going to wear them. You're not going to wear the bread and eat the clothes. So what do you need bread to eat and clothes to wear? So I'll answer this with a very strange story. It's a little bit out of the box. But there was once a TV program in the 1950s and 60s. It came from America. I don't want to mention what it is, in case you look it up on YouTube. But there was a very interesting episode in this particular television series, and it was about a man who was an avid reader, what we would call a bookworm. Yeah, people read and they read and they read and they read. Those people are called bookworms. Yeah, nowadays we would call them an e-book reader. You sit and you absorb and you're swiping the pages everywhere. You can't get enough. So this guy was such a bookworm. Any book he could get his hands on, a paperback, a hardback, a middleback, a quarterback, whatever, he would read it. Much to the chagrin of his wife and his boss, they all were like, what are you doing? You're wasting your life reading these trashy books. What's the matter with you? Get a grip, man. No, he would love reading his books. So it happened one day he was at work, and he decided, look, everyone's having a go at me because I'm reading all the time. I want a bit of peace and quiet. He got to his lunch hour, and he used to work at a bank. So he went into the bank vault. The massive, big iron door. And it's got the thing, you open the door like that. And he went inside, shut the door behind him, he closed himself from the world, and he's got his book that he's reading like this, finger there. Meanwhile, he's almost finished his book and he's coming to the end of his lunch hour, and he hears this almighty boom, like this, and the room is shaking. Now remember, he's in a vault that's it's almost airtight. Yeah, big, thick iron door. So he thinks, what on earth's going on? Comes out the door, and I can only describe to you what, in very simple words, he saw carnage. He saw utter destruction. What had happened is they must have dropped a bomb, the Russians or whoever it was, and it was nuclear or whatever, atomic, I don't know what it was, but it destroyed life on Earth, at least where he was. So he steps out and everyone's dead. Bodies everywhere, rubble, stone, wood, nothing, complete tohu vavohu. You think, what?
He wished to come true, that he said he wanted peace and quiet.
That's it. That's
he said to himself, I want to meet my mind. I want to meet with God and read my book.
That's exactly. That's the point of the story.
Like a desert. Why we Torah gave why we get the Torah from
on Har Sinai in the Midbar.
You have to have a clear mind. You have to have no building, nothing.
No distraction. So this is exactly what the point was. So now he comes out, then it dawns on him, listen, my boss is dead, my wife is dead, all the now once he got over that particular mindset that, oh my gosh, I've lost everything, he thinks, I've got the peace and quiet now. Menuchat nefesh, I can read my book when I want. I missed out one important detail. He had these, he was a geek, and he had these big thick glasses, yeah? So he looked like a real oddball. So now he's walking around, and he sees in the distance the public library there. And the public library is in ruins, but all over the place, all over the steps of the public library, books everywhere. More below, I've got every book I want now. I've got no wife to nag me, no boss to jump on my back. This is Gan Eden. So now, what does he do? He's so excited, he runs up the stairs of the library, and he trips, and his glasses fall, and they smash into smithereens. Now look what happened. 1 minute he was in ecstasy, next minute just his glasses on the... Now he can't even see his hand in front of his face. You see that? 1 minute to the next. What's the point of this story? Why am I telling you this story? Because you can have bread to eat, or you can have bread, meaning food, to fresh, to binge on, to do the exact opposite of what the food is for. The food is to nourish you so you can do your job in this world. You know, it has a purpose. But you can misuse food. You can use food to give you pleasure that you don't need. And it's going to make you fat. It's going to make you unhealthy. And it could, God forbid, give a person diabetes or heart problem. Clothes as well. Let's think about this for a minute. There's no women here, so I can talk my mind about clothing, yeah? Yeah, I'm not talking about women who buy 50 different pairs of shoes every week. I'm talking to men here, okay? You can relate to this. Clothes are for wearing. Clothes can be misused because we can buy clothes, and clothes can dictate our lives. Yeah, it's meant to keep you modest. It has a function, but you can misuse that. You can wear clothes to be fashionable. You can make clothes to stand out, and there's so many different reasons. So Yaakov Avinu is telling us, Hashem, I need the bread and I need the clothes. I don't want bread for the sake of bread. I want bread for what the proper function is. I don't want to misuse it. I want to use it for their intended use. And another thing, and this is where the story relates. What's the point of having food if you cannot benefit from it? You know, there are people out there, I'll tell you a phenomenal statistic. I heard this about 1 or 2 years ago. Somebody told me that one of the highest rating reasons for suicide in this world, it's not because people are depressed, it's not because people can't cope with things. It's people, you wouldn't believe this, people who've lost their sense of taste. They cannot taste the difference between sour and sweet. I heard this from a doctor. Sour and sweet and pungent and whatever. And it affects them because they can't get they don't have any recognition, they have any either pleasure, or everything is the same. It's bland. You don't want to eat something and not be able to taste it. Can you imagine? Cholona chodor without the taste. It doesn't bear thinking about. Yeah? Or obgusht, or vilo. So, everything seems bland if you don't have a sense of taste. So, somebody who really they can't tell the taste. It drives them crazy, and there's a lot of suicides from people who can't taste. So, okay, you have the food, but you want to be able to have some benefit from it. So Yaakov's saying, give me bread that I can taste it, instead of it just being a function. Otherwise I could have a pill, would do me just as good. Yeah, astronauts have pills, no? They don't have food. Just pop a pill, have an injection, finish. You get all your nutrients intravenously. So that's another thing. You need perspective. Okay. Now, I've got my source here. Let's go to Chaf Chet Pasuk Yud Daled, right back in the beginning of the parasha. I'm skipping back and forth a little bit because I'm trying to combine a few different points. Vaya zaracha ka'afar haaretz, God promises Yaakov Avinu that he's going to be very populous, not popular, populous. He's going to have lots of family, lots of boys, lots of girls, lots of grandchildren, lots of family. We're Persians, we know the importance of family. It's a great bracha. So how would you convey the blessing of having many descendants? You would say, you're going to have many gems in your life. You're going to have lots of diamonds coming from you. Yeah? Margaliot, that's the word. Come and sit, come sit. Come sit there, come sit there. You can have jewels coming from you. You would big up. Yeah, that's the vernacular. You would big it up. How does God describe Yaakov's descendants? Doesn't describe them as jewels or diamonds. Persians always appreciate a precious stone. How does he describe the descendants? Ka'afar ha'aretz, like the dust of the earth. Could you imagine if we would give that as a bracha? You go to a Brit Milah and say, oh, Borikalo, you had a baby, you had a Brit Milah. I hope you have many, many, many more clods of earth. What type of bracha is that? Telling somebody he's going to have descendants, they're going to be like shmutz. That doesn't sound like a bracha, but hang on. It's God saying this. So, come on. What does God mean? It must mean something positive. Hashem is conveying to us something so powerful, something that stood by the Jewish people in every era of history. Because the Jewish people, let's face it, us as Persians, we know what it's like to be mishubad, to be enslaved. The Anusei Mashad, what they had to go through, they had to make mikvaot underground, make the kanisot under the ground, make smachot under the ground. If you do anything in front of the Iranians, the Muslims, they'll do all sorts of terrible things. I know because my great-great-grandfather, Al Shalom, was Rav Mordechai Aklar, was called Mullah Murad. He was the chief rabbi of the Mashadim, allegedly. Yeah. So he was a shochet, he was a mohel, he was a mullah, he was everything. And he never took a penny from the community. But whatever he did, it was all done secretly. So we're no strangers to having suffering. And okay, apart from the Mashadim, what about the Crusades and the Nazis and the pogroms and Tachvatat, Chelmenitsky and all these horrible things happening? We're no strangers to anarchy and destruction and being anusim and Maranos. We're no strangers to that. So Hashem knew and tried to convey to us, there's going to be many, many times in your history when you're going to be lower than the lowest of the lowest of the low. People will tread on you like dirt. So Hashem's telling us, your descendants are going to be ka'afar ba'aretz. But you know what happens? I want to say something now, by the way. I'm not saying that we wish that we were like the dust of the earth, that we were the lowest. But I'm talking fact. But when a Jew is at his lowest ebb, I would go so far to say as 100% of the time, if not 99.9% of the time, the Jew will have one reaction and one reaction alone. And that is, he will turn upward. He won't turn and point the finger at God. God, what are you doing to me? Okay, maybe for a few minutes, but then he'll realize, I have to recognize why this is happening. And a Jew knows where to turn. There's the phrase, we've all heard of this phrase, there are no atheists in the foxhole. If you put a Jew and you put his back against the wall and you put a Nazi in front of him with a gun, he's not going to ignore it. He's going to say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Those who know the pasuk. And those who haven't said it for 30, 40, 50 years will remember it. So a Jew knows that when he's the dust of the earth, he's going to cry to Hashem. And that's what Hashem was telling us. Your descendants, doesn't matter how low they sink, They will always turn to me. There's a tremendous bracha. It's a tremendous bracha. You know, Yaakov Avinu had every reason to point the finger at God and say to him, why are you doing this to me? With the greatest of respect, I know you're the creator of everything, but did you have to give me a father-in-law who's worse than the... I don't want to mention who. And he had to work for him like a slave for so many years, and he cheated me 100 times. He changed my wages all the time, and he never dealt with me in an honest way. He never did that. He never pointed the finger against God. No matter how much he suffered, he never turned around and wagged his finger and why? No questions. It's us who've got questions. Us in our day and in other days. Okay, it's difficult for us. But there are some of us who like to question, have questions on God. We can have questions. No, nobody's saying the Jew doesn't have to have questions, but to point to God and say, it's your fault, that we need to draw the line. Yaakov never did that. And we need to emulate Yaakov. But look what was probably one of the worst things that happened to Yaakov. When he wanted to marry his wife Rachel, he was cheated of his wife. So that, for anything, he could have had te'enot on Hashem. But look what happened because of that. Look what happened when he married Leah first. And Rachel happened. Let's advance the story a little bit more. Rachel was the one of the wives, the two wives of Yaakov, who was not buried in Machpelah. She was buried somewhere else, on the road. She was the one who cried to Hashem. Everyone cried to Hashem. Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, everyone cried to Hashem. She was the one who was answered. I don't want to go into the story now. There's a whole long story. I'm running short of time now. Hashem answered her prayer, as opposed to Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, and David HaMelech, the whole story. And the Jews were saved because of her prayer. Well, there's a song, Mama Rachel, Mama Rachel cries. I'm not sure all the lyrics, but her prayer saved the Jewish people. And that would not have happened if we would have married her first, because maybe then she would have been in Machpelah. So suffice to say, without going through the whole story, that because Yaakov was cheated of his wife Rachel and he married her second, that was why the Geula happened. So can you imagine if he would have argued with God and said, why did you do this for me? And how he would have felt when he would be told the truth, that this is happening because I want your descendants to be saved. He would have felt terrible. It's terrible as an understatement. So the lesson that comes out here is that, plain and simple, Hashem is the true judge. Now it's easy for me to sit here in a comfortable chair with nobody arguing with me that Hashem is a true judge. When it's lama'aseh, when a person is suffering with pain and with yisurim, it's very, very hard to see that. Very hard to see that. To turn around and say, when you suffer and when you see other people suffering and when families suffering and parents are growing old and lo aleinu in diseases and cancer and all that, to say Hashem is a true judge. But you know what? Nobody's denying that it's hard. I'm the first one to say but you know what? It's something to bear in mind. It's something we have to keep at least in the back of our mind. You know what? Whatever Hashem does, whether we understand it, Hashem is a true judge. Yeah? Okay, I want to speed up a little bit because I've got a couple more bits and I'm going to let you go. Okay, who knows the story about the rock? We said Yaakov was a man who lived in in a tent learning Torah all day long. It was Yeshiva Bocha. Yeah, it was a Bachar who sat being a dindor inside a closed room, and he didn't have a chance. He didn't go out much. Yeah, he only went out when he had to. So now what happens? He finds himself in the middle of a pasture, and there's a well, and next to this well there's loads of Arab shepherds, Canaanite shepherds, and they're all standing about chatting one with the other. Yaakov comes to them and he says, "Hey guys, what's going on?" They say, "Yeah, we're okay, how are you?" And they have a little chat back and forth. Then Yaakov says, "What's going on? Why aren't you doing anything? You're shepherds, no? Why aren't you working? Is it lunch break?" No, it's not lunch break, they said. So why are you standing around? He said, "Well, we have to water our lambs and our sheep or whatever, and there's this big stone on the well, and we've tried to get it off, and we just can't do it." Yaakov says, "That's your problem? Come in, man." And he comes, he pushes the stone off, and the stone goes away, and suddenly he did the work of all these shepherds couldn't do. He did it in one chick-chack movement. So what's going on? What would you think if you heard this story and you never heard it before? You would think, oh, obviously, Yaakov was a big, strong, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He came like the Terminator, tach, and the thing goes flying, and he's flexing his muscles. "I'm Yaakov, you're weaklings. Chertopert." That's totally not what happened. He was Yaakov Avinu, with the greatest respect to Yaakov Avinu, was not a muscle man. This is not a game of brute strength. He literally was somebody who sat in a tent. He was not doing weights. He was not doing the gym. He didn't do any Pilates or Pilates, whatever you call it. Nothing. Itchy. So what's going on? So there is one simple answer to this, and it's very simplistic, but I need to explain it. There's a phrase which some of you might be familiar with. Ein davar omed lifnei haratzon. Nothing stands in the way of pure, unadulterated willpower. Now, that is not a standard pat answer. You cannot turn around and say, "You know what, I have a big exam tomorrow. I've got a big I've got my, what do they call it, regents, what do you call it, right, yeah, it's the regents exam tomorrow, and I'm a student, I have to study really hard, but I really want to do it, so I know I'm going to pass." It doesn't work like that. It's talking about somebody who wants something so much that he will move heaven or hell to do what he has to do. The best example I can give you is Lo Aleinu Baramenan. It should never happen to anybody. If there's a child who gets trapped under a car. Now, God forbid, if you're the parent who sees a child, especially if it's your child, underneath a car, the wedged underneath a car for some reason, and the child is trapped there. We've all heard these stories of women who've been in that situation, and they come and they lift up the car, and the child walks out. Since when have you heard of a woman lifting a car? Yeah? A woman can't even change a tire of a car. What are you talking about? Lift the car? So what's going on here? When you have to do something, and there's no choice, then that's what you have to do. I heard a beautiful story. It's not for me to quote Rabbi Wallerstein, because Rabbi Wallerstein quotes Rabbi Wallerstein much better than I quote Rabbi Wallerstein. But I'm going to tell you this now, even though I'm in America and I'm in his territory, I'm going to have the chutzpah to quote his story in his territory, because it personifies what I'm going to say. Very briefly, because it's not in my notes. There was a story he tells about a guy who was a trainer, like a personal trainer to the stars. And somebody got an appointment with him, and he charged a tremendous amount of money to teach you how to be successful, this personal trainer. So this guy paid the personal trainer for one lesson. And it was like an exorbitant amount of money. So this little guy comes to this personal trainer and he's ready, okay, you've got to teach me how to be successful. Fine. This personal trainer takes this guy and he tells him, you're going to put on a swimming, what do you call it? Swim trunks, what do you call it in America? Swim trunks? Swimsuit. Yeah, put on your swimsuit, we're going into the sea. Takes him into the sea, right? The guy's thinking, what on earth is this personal trainer doing? He's taking me to the sea, I paid him so much money for him to take me swimming. So they go into the sea, they get up to the necks, and the personal trainer says, this is where you get your lesson. He takes the guy, he pushes him under the water, and he holds him there, and meanwhile, this poor guy has paid so much money to be drowned. He's thinking, what will love, come on, he's killing me, he's gonna, who knows what he's gonna do to me? And he's gasping. He thinks that's it, he's about to pass out, and the trainer lets go, and the guy shoots up out of the water, like this. The personal trainer says, okay, you're right now. He says, why are you trying to kill me? What are you doing? He said, how did you feel when you're underneath the water? How did you feel? You thought that was the last breath you were going to take, right? He says, yeah, I thought I would never breathe again. He said, I wanted to remember that feeling when you felt that you would never take a breath again and you would give anything to have that next breath. That feeling where you are desperate beyond belief to have your next breath, that's how you got to be with your life. With the things that you want to achieve. Don't just go say, I want this and I want that. You got to be like it's your last breath. You want to be, could go for anything. You want to be a top football player? You want to be a top basketball player? Then you got to want it like literally that's your last breath. What a tremendous lesson. I don't know if it was worth so many thousands of dollars, but we got it for free, muft. Yeah, so I'm giving you. But the point that comes out is it's not just enough to want something. Yeah, there's a big rock there and I want to move it off. Yaakov said, this has to be done. The child's under the car. The car has to be removed. There's no choice. There's no maybe, let's try, let's call AAA, let's do this. No, the job has to be done. You go and do the job. Anyone who wants any success in life has to want it like there's no other choice. Yeah, it really is such a powerful lesson. And that's what Yaakov is teaching us. Ein davar omed lifnei haratzon. One additional point I was going to say about this incident with the shepherds is you would think Yaakov would be a kanai. What's a kanai? Somebody who's zealous. So you would think Yaakov sees these shepherds, they're skiving. How do you call skiving in America? All right? Skiving, dossing. How do you say? Is there a word for? Yeah, bunking, hooking. They're lazing off, hooking. What do you say? You think he'd run up to them like a big zealous guy? Hey, it says in the Torah you're not allowed to scale. You've got an employer. How dare you do it? No. First thing he does, Shalom Aleichem. How are you? What's your name? Who you work for? He engages them in conversation, and they're chatting and schmoozing. And after a while, he's now soften them up a little bit. He says, guys, you should be working now. I know it's not your lunch break, but so you really should be. You work for somebody. He's paying you by the hour. You can't just, he didn't come and like this. Yaakov is teaching us another story for life, a lesson for life. Even if you're 100% right, and Yaakov was 100% right, of course, the workers should have been applying their efforts. And if they fail, they should try again. If they fail again, they should try again and again and again and again. They shouldn't stop. You're not supposed to stop. You're supposed to do your best if you're being paid. So Yaakov was right. But at the same time, you're not going to get anybody to change their mind by coming and using the iron fist. Yeah? You have to warm to people, have to know that you're talking on their level. Now when I originally learned this, I wasn't so convinced, because it sounds like Yaakov was just almost I wouldn't say tricking them, but it was almost like winning them over. You know, you want to give somebody a little bit of rebuke. So instead of just shouting, you say, you know, they have a little bit of a schmooze with them, you know, talk a bit of cherta perd, you know what, can you do this for me, please? So what is he, trying to trick them? You know, people do that sometimes. You know, they want to get somebody on their side. They'll sweet talk them. That's what I was thinking of. Sweet talk, you schmooze them. Yeah, schmooze, can you now you do this for me. And now they're so happy with you. But it's deeper than that. And it was only today I realized this. I've given this share before in a few years ago. It wasn't because Yaakov wanted to sweet talk them. You know why I think Yaakov gave them that little chat beforehand? Because he wanted to warm himself to them. He wanted to feel predisposed to them. He wanted to love them, if you see what I mean. Like, he could have walked in there and seen Rachamim. You know, you're bad guys, you're lazy. No, he engaged him in conversation. And now, you know, he says, you know what? I'm talking to these guys. You know what? They're not so bad after all. And you know, I actually quite kind of like them. And they're sweet. Oh man, you're my brother, and you could be hugging them and everything. You know what I mean? When you talk to somebody, when you engage them in conversation, when you warm to them, then you'll feel a love towards them. It's not that so much that they feel warm to you, it's you also feel warm to them. You know? You ever had that feeling where you see somebody in the street, or you see somebody at a party or whatever, and you've never spoken to them before, you just see them in the room, and you take one look at that person and you say, I don't like this guy. He's a badbach, whatever, something, whatever you think, something negative. Yeah? And the longer you don't talk to that person, the longer you're going to dislike them. And then maybe you might see them again at another party or something, and still you don't love them, and it builds up and up and up until finally you talk to them, and then they say to you, hey, how you doing? And you shake hands, and suddenly, they're not so bad after all. I thought it was like a low life. Yeah, he's all right actually. He's fine. And you know, I actually quite like him. It's all because of preconception. So Yaakov broke down those barriers. Straight away, he started talking to them, and he broke down the barriers from himself. So important. You know, my wife always tells me this. She says to me, wherever you go, always engage people, because I've got the tendency, when I go out, I'm a bit, I think they call it in Persian, Beisharam. Yeah? Beisharam, no? Was that Hindi? Shy, when you're shy. How do you say shy in Persian? Khajalat. I'm a bit khajalat. I like to be in my own world and only talk to people. That's my natural default. Yeah, my wife said to me, don't be like that. Extend yourself. Put out your hand, and you'll find that people warm to you. Nowadays they call it networking. Yeah, but networking now, you think of the social network. But it just means you should be a bit friendly, because you break down a lot of barriers that way. Okay. So,
Could you teach that to the Arab cousins how to do that?
Okay. Well, listen,
Barriers?
my job is to teach it to my brothers. Yeah, they say, you know what they say? This is so true. Before you teach somebody far away, you teach somebody near. Yeah, it was, you know who it was? It was the Brisker Rav. It was a great Rebbe, Rav Soloveitchik. Yeah. Said, you know, he started the Brisk Yeshiva, very famous school of learning. He started that because he started teaching his children. He didn't open a yeshiva because I want loads of talmidim coming. He said, I'm teaching my children. You want to come and join my family? Come and join my family. But first and foremost, my Torah is coming from father to son. You hear our song? All of us should take these important messages that we learned together tonight. You need your feet on the ground. You need your head in the Shamayim. You need to bridge that gap between the earth and the heaven, and to always say, Od Sheva Shanim Achirot, that not to make somebody feel second best. You know, there was a thing with Leah. She could have felt second best. Rachel, don't make anybody feel second best. If you're nice to one child, be nice to the other child. Don't show any. We know what problems favoritism causes. You see what happened with Yosef in the Torah? That's obviously oversimplifying it. And always realize that what Hashem gives us, it has a purpose. It's not meant to be abused. Food is not meant to be abused. I'm definitely talking to myself with that one, and you're just overhearing it. Food is not meant to be abused. Clothing and possessions are not meant to be abused. They've got a function, they've got a purpose. Yirason, all of us should take these lessons. And all of us should all be sitting, not in front of Mashiach Kelati, but Mashiach Kelati with HaMashiach. B'ezrat Hashem, it should come without any further delay. Thank you very much. Anybody?